Making a movie is an arduous task. The scripting process, the issues with filming to a schedule, who's going to do the catering? No, seriously, who's going to make sure that Josh Brolin gets his 3-egg sandwich bang on 10? Who? Judith? Don't make me laugh. Judith couldn't tell her goddamn arse from an ovum. The point stands, though, that there are a myriad of potential headaches, and that's even before you include actors into the mix, because sometimes even the best thespians are reduced to quivering wrecks by the rigors of shooting, and that's exactly what we're going to look at today. So I'm Jules for WhatCulture.com, your one-per-list wonder, and these are 7 movie scenes so extreme that they made actors quit. Number 7. Carl Weathers stormed off set after Dolph Lundgren hit him for real in Rocky IV. We all know that Rocky IV's iconic battle between Apollo Creed and Ivan Drago concludes with Creed dying in the ring, but during shooting for the scene, things got a little too close for comfort for Carl Weathers. While sparring, Lundgren got a little too into the role of the Russian destroyer and ended up hurling his co-star across the ring, prompting Weathers to walk off set, call his agent, and declare that he was quitting the movie. And lest we not forget, Dolph didn't exactly mess around when it came to punching people, famously putting Sly Stallone in the hospital after a shot to the chest caused his heart to swell and would have kept going until it popped had he not sought medical help. However, in comparison, this was just a slight tickle to Weathers. Production was, however, shuttered for 4 days while writer-director Star Stallone attempted to coax Weathers to return, which he eventually did after Lundgren agreed to cool his method acting down just a tad. Number 6. Emma Watson was uncomfortable around Channing Tatum in a thong. This is the end. I think there are many, and by many I mean the 15 women who actually watch What Culture, shout out to you by the way, who would love to be in Emma's position right here. That meat popsicle in a stringy thingy sounds like your dad's cup of tea, that does. However, Watson left filming of This Is the End because of Tatum's highly strung taters, and she expressed discomfort with a scene in which he was only wearing a thong. A set report from an extra states that Watson left the film after being overwhelmed by the raunchiness of Tatum's performance, and though he didn't name Watson specifically, James Franco himself recounted an extremely similar story with an unrelated actress in the film, and when you consider that she was meant to have a much larger role and that mysteriously didn't make it into the final film, putting 2 and 2 together makes Channing Tatum's chode the final straw. Number 5. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio rage quit on James Cameron in The Abyss. By all accounts, production on James Cameron's sci-fi classic The Abyss was absolute hell, as is true of pretty much every Cameron movie. Star Ed Harris almost drowned in filming one scene, ended up punching Cameron as a result, and even had an emotional breakdown on his way home from the set, but he forged ahead regardless. His co-star, though, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, wasn't quite so eager to put up with the director's crap, and lost it with Cameron while shooting the famous scene where Harris's character administers CPR to her, desperately slapping her across the face, repeatedly screaming, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The famously perfectionist Cameron ordered countless retakes of this scene, and it became far too much for Mastrantonio when the camera malfunctioned halfway through a take. Now the thing is that Mastrantonio for some reason didn't like being soaking wet, slapped and screamed at. After all, she's not your mum in her rancid porn videos, there's my one per list, so she stormed off set screaming, "We're not animals." She refused to return to shooting for a while, meaning that the shots focused on Harris's face are largely composed of the actor shouting at thin air, though given the brilliance of his performance in these scenes, you'd never actually know it. The actress was eventually, of course, convinced to return to set, and despite the hellish production, the result is arguably one of the most ambitious and unforgettable sci-fi films ever made. Number 4. 4 Native American actors walked off set amidst racism accusations on The Ridiculous Six. Adam Sandler's straight-to-Netflix Western comedy The Ridiculous Six came under intense scrutiny months before its release, with many, myself included, saying that it should have been straight to the bin, and that's all because it came to a head when 4 Native American day players walked off the movie after becoming upset with its insensitive, even racist portrayal of Apache culture, alongside its generally sexist attitude towards women. Now, if you like this film, then bully for you, but for many, the critics included, this was a sign of the film's quality or lack thereof. It wasn't enough to stop hundreds of other extras from showing up to work, but it was enough to capture the world's headlines for a while and paint the film in a negative light before it even released. Number 3. Jim Carrey couldn't handle the insane makeup process. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. While Jim Carrey's epic transformation into the Grinch may have won legendary makeup artist Rick Baker an Oscar, it was absolute hell for the comedy legend. Carrey recounted in recent years that the first day took 8.5 hours to apply all of the makeup, which made him feel buried alive. The stress of applying and the sheer heat and weight of the costume became too much for Carrey, and it prompted him to kick a hole through the wall of his trailer and tell director Ron Howard he was quitting the film. Howard quickly enlisted the help of one Brian Grazer, who then hired a CIA operative specializing in torture training to shepherd Carrey through the emotional draining makeup process. Imagine that, being literally told that yes, this is torture, but I'm gonna help you through it for this kids film. Number 2, Melanie Griffith feared lions might eat her, and she was almost right. Raw. This 1981 exploitation film revolves around a family being attacked by a fleet of animals in their secluded jungle home, and is often given the dubious credit of the most dangerous film shoot in history. Production took 11 years in total, with over 70 cast and crew members being injured by the live and often untrained animals on set. Notably, Tippi Hedren received a fractured leg and scalp wounds, director Noel Marshall contracted gangrene from his own injuries, cinematographer Jan de Bont was almost scalped by a lion and required 220 stitches, and assistant director Doran Cowper had his throat bitten open. And that's just the beginning. It ultimately became too much for Hedren's daughter Melanie Griffith, who also played her daughter in the movie, because she quit the film after witnessing 2 lions fighting, telling her mother, "I don't want to come out of this with half a face." Griffith was eventually coaxed back to production, however her fears very nearly came to pass as she was mauled by a lion while shooting a scene. The lion only left the actress alone after her brother John leapt on the floor to distract the animal, and Griffith ended up requiring 50 stitches and plastic surgery after initial fears that she might lose an eye. Clearly, Mel should have trusted her prior instincts. And number 1, Rob Morrow got fed up of all the production drama, The Island of Dr. Moreau. While the majority of these stories at least resulted in the actors eventually being sweet-talked into returning to the set, this wasn't the case of Rob Morrow, who was hired to play the part of UN agent Edward Douglas in John Frankenheimer's notoriously doomed 1996 sci-fi horror, The Island of Dr. Moreau. On just the second day of shooting, Moreau had become fed up with the inclement weather conditions and a set dominated by squabbles between the original director Richard Stanley, co-stars Val Kilmer, Marlon Brando, and twitchy studio executives. In tears, Morrow called New Line chairman Bob Shaye and begged him to let him go from the film, which Shaye agreed to do. Given the film's commercial and critical failure, Morrow probably made the right choice, if only for his sanity. All things considered, this is certainly a case of a movie's insane production being far more interesting and entertaining than the film it actually produced.